to the Drew Sutton Leadership Show, lighting the way with real leaders, real stories, and real impact. Because when leaders stop growing, the darkness wins. All right, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. Today's show, we are going to be asking the question, how do you build authentic human marketing in a world drowning in content, ads, automation, and distraction? We're talking guerrilla marketing, omnichannel storytelling, and authenticity online, and discovering why some brands feel alive while others feel corporate and forgettable. To answer that question, we have the great, the wonderful, the powerful Cam Sloss. Cam is the scrappy marketing strategist, startup builder, and storyteller, helping brands grow through organic, human-centered marketing. He has launched multiple businesses, spent nearly a decade mastering omnichannel content strategy, and has helped shape the voice and growth of Awesome Inc. through viral campaigns, startup storytelling, and community-driven marketing. Cam believes timelessness, trust, and authenticity matter more than trends, and he thinks most businesses are wasting their money trying to fake all three. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Cam.
Hey, Drew, what's up?
Hey, man.
Happy to be here.
Good. Yeah, I got to tell you that I'm super excited to have you on the show. I've watched your career go from kind of intern to really shaping how Awesome Inc. shows up in all the channels, in LinkedIn, in Facebook, and other socials. Super love you're doing video, you're doing scripts, you're doing, just flat images. Like you're kind of doing it all, and it's super high quality. I think I reached out to you about a year ago and was super excited to watch the progression happening. And I know that you're starting to branch out a little bit. You do services for startups and other larger organizations. How did you get so excited about marketing?
Yeah, I could probably trace that all the way back to like growing up in the house that I grew up in. Grew up in a house with a dad that was a big time entrepreneur. He taught me so much about what it looks like to, grind and be scrappy and build a business, sell a business. I got to see him, do all of those things while still loving his family and being a good dad. And, now I get to be his friend. And so kind of fast forwarding up to like high school, college time, I started experimenting with like starting businesses. A couple of them were more in the fashion industry. So I like started a t-shirt brand. I started a vintage reselling business that grew quite a bit in college. And I learned so much from that. And that's kind of where I would say my passion for marketing kind of grew was in that marketing of myself, and the clothes I was selling, the things I was doing, broadcasting that to the world on Instagram through photo, video, live. I would do like live videos and podcasts and sell live on Instagram, and then of course in-person events. I did my first one back about 8 years ago, I'd say. It's a local event called the Drunken Flea. Quick shout out to that event. The Drunken Flea. It's like a vintage and antiques event that, you go and there's a bunch of tents and everything. The very first one I did was about 8 years ago, and there were 9 vendors, and it was the first one. And now it's one of those events that they have like a wait list of people to get in because they can't fit the 60 plus vendors that are there. But I kind of wanted to drill into one kind of core learning from that time that I still apply to like my marketing today. And it's kind of like 3 principles. It's consistency, quality, and community.
I love this. Yeah. Actually, can you just say that again? I think this is so powerful. It's so easy to wrap your brain around. Give me the 3 one more time here.
Consistency, quality, and community are kind of these 3 core principles that I apply to my marketing today that I learned back in college when I was just building an Instagram clothing business. kind of how that played out back in those days of college and building that business was I committed to just posting every day.
Yeah.
I was consistent with it, and not just consistent in how often I was posting, but consistent in like talking to people, consistent in the quality of the posts I was making. And there's that kind of quality piece. I'll let you kind of cut
Yeah.
it here.
Yeah. So let's talk about that consistency piece because I find a lot of folks, we've done startup weekends together for years now. And a lot of the startup scene can be about getting to a pitch competition. It can be about like, oh, how do you architect it? But as soon as you get off the drawing board and you start to talk to a real human, not AI, not ChatGPT, an actual human, they want different things than you think that they want.
Mhm.
So talk to me, how do you maybe jump over that hurdle of actually getting out and talking to people, or maybe it's baked in the way you do things.
Mhm.
So many people fall short because they don't actually do marketing. They do branding, but they don't do talk to people and find out data sort of stuff. So, how do you overcome that? Like, I'm afraid to talk to somebody, and I want real feedback. How do you manage that cycle?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, what that looks like in my life is that community piece, that third principle.
Oh yeah,
It's really like committing to that. So whether that's hosting your own events, which we do a ton of with Awesome Inc.,
yeah,
or making sure that you're investing in that, we can't have a million friends and like manage all of those relationships all at once. But if you have like your trusted core group of people, making sure that you're investing in those relationships consistently, whether it's grabbing coffee or lunch, you know, each other kind of like iron sharpens iron. So kind of sharpening each other, asking each other questions, pushing each other to be better, do better. That's a big one for me. And kind of with the consistency, going back to like the marketing piece of it, like it really comes down to after you've like built that business, you're figuring out what makes you authentic and real to people. It's really about like back in college, I had a lot more free time. I was posting every single day on that account.
right.
Like stories, feed posts, going live, all that stuff. But really, what I think a lot of people miss is just committing to a consistent cadence of some sort. Like, even if it's once a week or once every couple weeks, like when you're just starting out, kind of gearing up, I think it's important to commit to that and to hold yourself to it. And that's what's going to start to build that authentic presence online for people.
No, I love that. I can tell you from my personal experience, the reason I have the show is a friend of mine challenged me to a week of everyday posting.
Mm.
And I said, okay, fine. I'm going to improve one aspect of the show. So I went from holding the phone like this to the studio that you see now in the show. And now I think I'm at 114, 115 episodes. And as you kind of build it and you run into a roadblock, you're like, but, I mean, the show's not about me, the show's about you. You say something else that really fascinates me, and I think more people should be talking about it, and that is that we need to stop being distracted. Now, there's some irony in a marketer saying we should be less distracted, right? How do you go about in your personal life, I guess in your personal life, but then also for your clients, how do you go about being less distracted? Do you fast the phone? Do you get the just black and white phone? How do you manage creating dead space in your head for creativity to flow and focus to flow?
Yeah, man, you're asking the tough questions because it's something I think about every single day, as a marketer and also trying to be less distracted. So gosh, we can go a little deep here. We can, have a little fun. I I kind of want to tie this piece of distraction into kind of a core value that I have within myself of timelessness.
Okay.
It's this word that I've thought about time and time again as what I kind of want to go back to as I think about what I'm spending my time on and what I'm creating. So this idea of timelessness applies to um, really like kind of what I was saying, like what I'm spending my time on. So what does that mean? It means things that will last forever. So whether that's fashion, I'm big into fashion. I specifically wear like a ton of vintage and antique clothing. It's
Yeah, and just for the audience, yeah, Cam always has it's not like, flashy fashion that's in your face, but, like, we
Mhm.
were out at the racetrack the other day, and it was just kind of this, like, chill, I don't even know how to describe it, it kind of flowed. I'm an engineer, I have, like, pants that match shirts, and that's it, and I
Yeah.
deeply appreciate your fashion sense.
Yeah, yeah. So that idea of timelessness, it's like what specifically with fashion, it's like what pieces and styles have kind of transcended trends. And I want to apply that idea to the ways that I'm spending my time and the things that I'm creating. So I think within marketing, you can look at things like um, being a good thinker and strategist and relational person. Those are so important to a marketing strategy, as well as like being a great writer. That's a timeless skill that
Mm,
anyone going into marketing should hone in on that craft. And it's something that I don't hone in on enough, to be honest. Like I I wish I could say that I spent time every single day, not only like writing, but I feel like you have to spend a lot of time reading as well to hone in on a craft like that. And so, and then even outside of marketing, again, like timelessness applies to being able to cook someone a really good meal or craft up a nice cocktail for someone that you're hosting. I think that these are like timeless things that really has become a core value for me. And sometimes when I'm doing marketing, whether it be for Awesome Inc. or another company, it can be there's some friction there with like trying to stay up with trends and like
yeah,
create things that like might be ultimately distracting to people to kind of vie for their attention. So that's
yeah.
something internally that I wrestle with all the time.
I was literally about to pull this string because, as I watched the content that you're putting out for Awesome Inc., I mean, there's a guy in an inflatable unicorn costume. At one point, you did, is it Leonard? You did this like comedy bit where you just like did the A B, the entire alphabet for reasons that you should show up to Awesome Inc.
Yeah.
Like your stuff is legitimately clever. Like I've super enjoyed. It's kind of like low key clever. You're like watching it, and the humor just kind of builds, kind of deadpan humor. But I think you all did a fake airplane video where instead of like put on the oxygen mask, it was like stay in your seats and enjoy the show, and this is what to expect.
Hmm.
And just really clever intelligent comedy. So I have this thing where you're talking timelessness, but yet you're doing kind of zany things. So how do you
Yeah.
mesh? Like nobody wants to be the Family Guy or kind of some of the crass comedy that we get. Rick and Morty. I think we can all
Sure.
agree that Rick and Morty is funny, but also a little bit too much.
Sure.
Um, how do you mesh that timelessness concept you're talking about with relevance and humor?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to the fact that like authenticity is also timeless. So um Awesome Inc. as a brand and a lot of the content we've created on that on our platforms is really authentic to who we are. Kind of going back to like our core values too with Awesome Inc. One of them is be you. That's our fourth one. If you're being a good person, if you're being excellent, and if you're being a friend, you have permission to be yourself. And I think some of those videos like encapsulate our sense of humor that we have as a company and as a culture.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time and effort building that culture. And I know, Drew, you've been a part of that culture for a while, like in and out of the space, attending our events. You get to see that kind of sense of humor. And that's the whole authenticity piece that lends to the timelessness, I think.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Authenticity. I think so many times people are just trying to make the next Super Bowl commercial, but
Yeah.
the really great ones, I think authenticity is a great phrasing for that. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm thinking through two of my favorite commercials of all time. Is I'm on a horse, which is the Old Spice
Oh
commercial,
yeah.
and they get this guy, and he's like, "Look at your man. Now look at me. Now look at your man. He's not me, but of course he could be me." It's like this super high paced, zany, but it's
Hmm.
authentic to the brand.
Hmm.
And the other one is ClickFunnels, some of the original ClickFunnels content. They had this gold miner, and he calls himself a gold digger, and there's an obvious, pun there. And then he's a painter, and he paints nudes, squirrels. Like it's just like this completely zany. It goes on for like 20 minutes, but it's just one zany thing after another. But it's completely authentic to the brand, and it captures the excitement of entrepreneurialism and the cool parts about ClickFunnels. When you sit down with a client, what are you searching for? Like, how do you find their authenticity? Because as an engineer, I sometimes, like, in my brain, I'm like, oh, we do this process, and I forget what I'm actually doing for the client because I get so excited. The engineering motto is, if there's not enough features, or sorry, if it's not broke, add more features. Right? That's the engineering motto. So how do you sit down with somebody that's so dialed in on their product that they forget who they authentically are and how to authentically express that?
Yeah, I would say when I sit down with a client, or a founder that's in the Awesome Inc. ecosystem, I'm pretty quick in that kind of strategy to focus on the people pretty fast. So whether that's highlighting the team, the founder, telling stories of what's going on within the company. I made a post for one of my clients the other day of like, the team went to lunch, and it's talking about stuff like that and what the conversations were like at that table. That I think when you focus more on the people and the relationships that you're building, the community that you're building, that's something we do with Awesome Inc. too. Is we try and tell people stories. We send out a co-working newsletter every month where we try to feature a different member of our workspace. Which, if we haven't featured you before, we should get you in there. That would be a fun one.
That'd be a good.
But yeah, I'm pretty quick to focus on the people and the values of the company and what sets them apart from all the other ones. And usually it's like a mix of those two things, and learning how to tell those stories is a great skill.
Got it. Tell me maybe the story when you were like, oh, I should be a marketer. So, because I know that you've done t-shirts, you've done multiple different things. When was the moment where you were doing the marketing work and you're like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, I have a funny answer, and then I have a more real answer. The funny answer is, all growing up, my mom and dad, love them to death, for whatever reason encouraged me to be an engineer or be an accountant. And I think my funny answer is, as soon as I sat down in my first accounting class at the Gatton School of Business at UK, I knew I did not want to be an accountant. And then my more, and breaking that to my mom, was a fun conversation. Not really, but no. And then I think the more real answer is, I think early on, and honestly, it wasn't even until recently that I put this to words, but I think deep down early on, as I was doing the marketing things without kind of even knowing it, I think I realized pretty quickly that, like, deep down I'm an artist, and an artist needs to create stuff. And so I am in my best flow and in my best kind of work mode when I'm creating something every day. And it's not necessarily a piece of content. It's a new process for our team or a system within my own workflow that is helping me be better. And that's a more general answer, I'd say, than like specifically marketing. But I do think the core of it is like that I'm an artist and I need to be creating things, and marketing gives me an outlet to do that.
No, I get it. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned I remember going to University of Kentucky and interviewing at the architecture school before I went to the engineering school. And so I sat down with the dean and I was like, what's the difference between architecture and engineering? And he said, well, and he kind of like tilted his beret just so. And he was like, an architect is concerned with how big the space feels, and an engineer is concerned with how big the space is. And 18-year-old Drew was like, well, I think we're done here. And I walked over to the engineering building.
Yeah.
This is fun. Like, getting to see an artist, and then because I actually have kind of the reverse story of I went to the art and I was like, this peg does not fit in this hole.
Yeah, right.
No, that's cool, man. All right, let's get tactical for a second. I promised the audience we'd talk marketing and guerrilla tactics and what people should. So let's just start with what people should stop doing right now, because we want them to be authentic. We want them to be consistent. We want quality, timeless works that are going to be out there doing the work day in and day out of sharing your brand, sharing your authentic message, who you are, what differentiates you. What are people doing that they should just stop doing right now? Like, look, this is a waste of your time. If anything, it's killing you. What should people stop doing?
I think people should stop spending money. Especially like early on in your marketing strategy. I think a lot of people start spending money before they've actually figured out who they are or what they should do. I think it's like I've been on calls and had conversations with people in the community that kind of almost the default is like, oh, I need to start spending money on Google ads. And it's just not my preference or like advice to people. And part of that is because Awesome Inc. is a nonprofit, and I don't have this unlimited marketing budget that some other professionals do. And so over the past 5+ years, I've had to learn. And then even before that, as like a college kid starting a business, I didn't have any money.
Right.
So I've spent the past decade figuring out what are all the ways that I can get my name out there, get myself out there, tell my story authentically, that cost me $0. And so truthfully, when you kind of dig down into that and you're utilizing the different channels that you can, I like to call it my kind of scrappy omnichannel organic marketing strategy. And once you kind of dive into that and do it for a while, like that consistency and that quality piece that I was talking about, and then the community kind of splashes in as well as you're having a more local presence, you're attending events, you're building community online. You can do that through a podcast, through in my early Instagram days, I joined a lot of group messages on Instagram, and I was talking a lot with people who had similar interests and building a brand that way. But yeah, I kind of wanted to dig in a little bit on the omnichannel marketing piece, where it's really interesting. AI has exploded, of course, and it's been really interesting to see how well just this organic omnichannel marketing strategy can work with AI and AI search summaries and things like that. Because AI is pulling from social media, LinkedIn, Reddit, your own website, other reputable websites to educate its answers. And so if you've done the omni-channel thing and you've put yourself out there on all those different platforms and you have that authority and that expertise out there, you can actually show up really well in those results.
No, I like this. There's a couple things I love about this. The first one is the concept of treasure the small time. Like when you start getting big, everybody's watching you, and your screw ups are really big and they're really embarrassing, and your missteps are really bad. When you're small and you make a misstep, it doesn't really matter. Like I remember nobody was watching my first shows. Nobody. It was just me, and I was in the corner. I think I had a green screen behind me at the time, and it was not even tight. It was just draped fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was watching. It doesn't matter. You get to learn. You get those reps on the track, right? And you get comfortable. My first speaking gigs, I remember my very first speaking gig, I held my elbows in at my side the entire time. I called it my T-Rex speech because I looked like a T-Rex. I was just kind of like this. So I was like, hey, look at this. To this day, when I get on stage, the first thing I do is I push my elbows out because of that first speech. I videoed myself, but it's okay. Treasure the small time. Because that's where you kind of work out your bits. That's where you work out what resonates with your ideal clients. That's where you work out, we have a phrase in coaching, which is you can't see the label from the inside of the bottle. A lot of times what other people see you as and what they want from you you think it's not valuable, or and I'm trying to be ketchup, and everybody's like, dude, you're barbecue. We love barbecue. Don't be ketchup, or whatever it is. I also like the idea that you said, the temptation once you get a little bit of money, and you get that from a bank, so you don't actually have money, you're just borrowing money. Once you get a little bit of money, is the temptation is to throw money at a solution without doing the deep work of finding out what's really authentic for you. And what people really want from you, and what you can, that Ichigawa, this is what I'm the best in the world at, and this is what I can make money at, and this is what I love doing. So yeah, I like that idea of when you're small, just get out there and do the work. And then that is what begins to scale. I think that's great advice.
I've talked to founders a lot recently that are like, oh my gosh, I started this business and I'm realizing that like 95% of it is marketing. And a lot of founders don't know how to do that. But the ones that do, are putting that work in on the front end to build that brand, to get themselves out there on those different channels, and to get out in the community and talk to people. I think those are really valuable. And yeah, you mentioned earlier about when you first started this podcast, how like nobody was watching and your setup wasn't as great. But really, I'm sure you've learned this, like the value out of hosting live events and posting podcast episodes is like not even necessarily the people who join live, but the content you're creating after that. And making sure that you're maximizing that side of it. So I think you've done a great job of that. I've seen that time and time again.
Thanks, man. This is why I have you on the show. I've super enjoyed watching your growth path, and just the quality. Okay, so we've talked about what you should stop doing. What if here I am, we're at a cocktail party, and I'm like, oh, Cam, you do marketing. What's one piece of advice that you give to everybody? I have a piece of advice it's my bit for bits. So when I was 28, and I apologize to the audience that have heard this story, I know I've told it several times. When I was 28, my best friend, I was an engineer and he was an insurance salesman, and I liked his paycheck better than mine. So I got an interview at his place, and like halfway through the interview, I very rudely stopped the interviewer, and I was like, yeah, I got math. How do you sell? And he said, well, we have these 40 scripts. And I was like, what's a script? And he walks over to the board, and in 5 minutes, he explains to me why I should cash in my 401k and buy an annuity with him. So I left that job interview with an annuity, not a job. And so this is my bit. This is my sales script about the power and the importance of having sales scripts. So I call it my bit for bits. But you're working through those bits with people, so that when we meet each other in the crowd, we can talk the bits. When we're on the screen, we're talking the bits, and it's just a consistent message over and over and over again, which goes kind of, I think, to your consistency question.
Yeah.
So that's my bit. That's the one piece of advice I give to anybody at a crowd. What is your one piece of marketing advice that you give to everybody when you first meet them?
Yeah. A lot of words are swirling in my head. I think that it does go, in part, my advice goes back to the consistency, quality, and community. Investing in being consistent in what you're doing, and not just consistent, but like consistently authentic. Be yourself. Don't try to be someone else. Don't try to be a different brand. Like, pave your own path, and keeping it high quality while you're doing it, and keeping your community close. I think it's rare that you see someone wildly successful that's done it all themselves. You need to surround yourself with great people, and that's like kind of marketing advice, but maybe it extends outside of that a bit. And yeah, I think another core thing is like, an old Middle Eastern proverb. It is better to give than to receive. It's the last thing that Paul leaves with the Ephesians as he's off to be exiled. He says it is better to give than to receive, and having that kind of give first mentality going into any business or any endeavor you're going into, even in marketing, you can apply that. So those are kind of some of the things that float around my head if I'm giving anyone advice.
No, I love that. Your advice about be yourself reminds me of he's the country singer that does Beer Run. His name is Garth Brooks. There we go. Kind of a famous guy.
Mhm.
Garth Brooks tells this story about when he first got picked up by an agent, and the agent has him, in the studio, and he's recording, and he goes, "I was singing my songs, and I was trying to be Travis Tritt. I think it was Travis Tritt. Maybe it was Hank Williams. But anyway, he was trying to like be the next Hank Williams." And
Mhm.
the recording studio guy was like, just pause the session. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, I'm singing." He's like, "No, what are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I'm trying to be like Hank Williams." He's like, "Well, I already got a Hank. I want you. You know, people want you. That's why they're going to be your." And frankly, if they don't want
Yep.
you, if they wanted Hank Williams, you can't be Hank Williams. You're just going to be a bad imitation. But
Mhm.
he says it a little more powerfully than I did. But I remember him saying that in an interview that, and this is now on the other side, this is Garth Brooks. Now, if you listen to country music in the 90s, there was no bigger star. Garth Brooks was was the Lady Gaga of his day. And
Yeah.
he was trying to be Hank Williams. But I already got a Hank Williams. Why would I choose you? Well, so then he went back to himself, and of course, now we know the history. So I love that phrase. I love your advice there. Be authentic. Don't try to be somebody else.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. All right, man. Well, we're kind of running out of time on the show here. I'm looking over at my notes here. Um, Tell me about a time where you helped somebody break through that authenticity barrier, where you were like, I feel like we're off brand here, and you took the risk and you really made that shift. And tell me how that worked out.
Hmm. Yeah. I think I've had like a lot of honest conversations like that with people
Yeah.
where they're trying to figure out like who they are as a brand and even who they are as a person sometimes. And I think telling stories is just like what can break someone out of something like that and have their brand stand out among the rest. Telling good stories, whether it's and it can be a way that you succeeded, or heck, sometimes telling people how you failed is like even more powerful, and
Yeah.
what you learned from it. So, um, I just again I see people buying into trends before they buy into themselves. I see people buying into ads before I see them buying into their own brand, like and figuring out who they are. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I see happening a lot is, and I think a lot of it can come from just this idea of being distracted. I think when when you don't give yourself or your brand a little time to breathe every day and to think, to sit with yourself and to get to know yourself, and then you spend your whole day just being distracted.
Yeah.
um, every little thing in our world today is built, designed, bought to get your head equity, to get your time, your attention. We live in
Yeah.
this attention economy right now, and if you're fully bought into that and you're distracted all day, you're just not gonna find yourself. You're not gonna find your brand. You're just gonna get lost in the noise. And so, I think the world would be a better place if everyone was a little less distracted.
I Man, I love that. I'm a big John Maxwell fan. John Maxwell's big conference back in August. Actually, I think this one was in January. He does one in August and January. He pulled up kind of in the private section. He pulled up his phone and he said, "You know what this is? It's not a weapon of mass destruction, because I think a lot of good things can come from the phone. This is a weapon of mass distraction."
Mhm.
When you start seeing that, it's really profound. When I was a kid, I think my mentors told me you should journal. The problem is that I had an older brother, and I was like, why would I write down my thoughts and feelings for my older brother to find? Like that's that's just asking for abuse from an older brother. But as I've gotten older, and especially in the line of work that I do now, I spend a good hour every day dialoguing with ChatGPT, having it ask me questions to kind of clarify my thinking on topics. Because basically, what I sell is clarified thinking, right? I like to think of it as distilling truth. Is you're looking at the data set of the world and you're saying what's going on here, and yeah, spending some time every day focused on clarifying your thinking really makes a world of difference. I love that you bring up that stop being distracted and take the time to think, because that's where the authenticity comes from. I think that's super profound.
Yeah.
Well, we're actually pretty much out of time for the show. I'm going to turn the show over to you. You have the last couple of minutes here just to talk to the audience.
Yeah. I just kind of want to dig back into this core value that I've found within myself as like a personal brand, and that's the timelessness piece. And I want to encourage people to figure out what are those things in your life, in your work, in your career that you can invest your effort and your thought and even maybe some of your money into. What are the timeless things going on here? We see, of course, a lot of these kind of fickle trends all the time on our phones, on social media, on advertisements, on whatever it may be, that are just vying for your attention and trying to distract you. And that, these skills that you could build now that might not matter tomorrow. So I would encourage people to think about, like, what are those things in your life, those skills you could develop, those marketing tactics that you could dive into that have a more timeless feel to them and are gonna last for a while and gonna kind of transcend the trends that are going on around you. So whether that be learning how to be a better writer, sitting with yourself undistracted to be a better thinker, learning instead of like consuming an hour of TikTok recipes, actually taking one and learning how to do it and doing it 5 times so that you're good at it. Or like learning, a little bit more about vintage Americana and how denim and workwear that were made back in the 50s are going to transcend time and be here in another 100 years. People are still wearing them instead of the cheap t-shirt that you buy on Amazon.
That's awesome. Listen, I think you get an idea of why I had Cam on the show. He is the marketer that is obsessed with timelessness. He is the marketer that is obsessed with lack of distraction and bringing authentic stories and humor and fashion in the sense of just polish and good taste to marketing. Follow him if you want to follow him. I put this in the comments already. We have here's his LinkedIn, Camden Sloss. He's worked at Awesome Inc. Awesome Inc. is a great member of the community. Be awesome, be a friend, be yourself, be good. Great group of folks. If you're a small business and you're asking yourself, hey, how do I get into marketing? I don't really have a budget for a huge marketing push, but I need somebody to help me come up with my authentic brand. Cam is a great resource for you. Reach out to him, tell him you saw him on the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. And with that, we are